At first, it looked like just another normal day, until that one encounter was about to turn everything upside down.
Okay, we're just gonna peek in. Oh my, what the f?
These ordinary moments turned into encounters no one was prepared for. And somehow, what you're seeing right now is not even the most disturbing part of this video, because the final encounter is the one that makes this entire list so hard to forget. But before you're about to see that, let's start with the first disturbing encounter. A late-night drive on the Mexico-Puebla highway turned into a nightmare for 4 young friends when what looked like a normal road hazard suddenly became something much more dangerous. The group was driving near Chalco, Mexico, overtaking other cars in their pickup truck when they suddenly hit a large rock in the middle of the road. The impact damaged the tire and the bottom of the truck, forcing them to pull over onto the shoulder. At first, it seemed like they had simply been unlucky. The woman in the front passenger seat grabbed her phone and called for help, thinking they only needed assistance with the vehicle. But what they did not know was that the rock may not have ended up there by accident. While she was still on the phone, an armed man stepped out of the darkness and approached the truck from behind. Before anyone inside could fully react, he was already at the driver's window, smashing it with a weapon and shouting at them to open the doors. The driver tried to keep the situation under control. He spoke to the man, tried to calm him down, and did everything he could to avoid making the situation worse. But the attacker only became more aggressive, hitting the window harder as the people inside realized they were trapped on the side of a dark highway with nowhere safe to go. That is when the driver made the only decision he could. Before the glass could break completely, he slammed his foot on the gas and tried to escape. But as the truck shot forward, the attacker fired directly toward the driver's side window. The glass shattered instantly, sending pieces flying into the vehicle as the driver cried out, believing he had been hit. Meanwhile, the passenger was still on the phone with authorities, begging for an ambulance before the call suddenly cut off. Somehow, despite the chaos, the group managed to get away. The driver was left with minor burns and damage to his clothing, but thankfully, none of them suffered serious injuries. Authorities later opened an investigation, but as of now, no major updates have surfaced, and that is what makes this encounter so disturbing. These 4 friends thought they had hit something in the road, but within seconds, it became clear that the rock may have been part of a trap designed to force them to stop in the dark on the side of the highway, where someone was already waiting. But the next encounter becomes even more chaotic, because this time, the danger is trapped inside a moving bus. It started when a passenger asked to be let off between 2 regular stops. The driver refused, telling him he would have to wait until the next approved stop. But the passenger did not take that answer well. What followed was a tense argument that lasted nearly 2 minutes, with the passenger becoming more agitated as the driver continued trying to keep control of the situation. Then, without warning, the passenger reached into his jacket and pulled out a handgun. The bus surveillance camera showed him walking toward the driver with the weapon pointed directly at him, turning what had been a normal disagreement into a life-or-death situation inside a moving bus. But there was one thing the passenger did not know. The driver was armed too. Within seconds, the driver pulled out his own firearm and both men opened fire inside the bus. Bullets tore through the clear partition near the driver's seat, while 2 other passengers in the back scrambled to get away from the gunfire. The situation was chaotic, confined, and terrifying, because there was almost nowhere for anyone to run. Even after the first shots were fired, the confrontation did not end. The driver eventually stopped the bus, left his seat, and continued firing toward the back of the vehicle, where the passenger had retreated. By the time the chaos finally stopped, both men had been hit. The driver was struck in the arm, while the passenger was hit in the abdomen. Thankfully, both were taken to the hospital with injuries that were not considered life-threatening. The driver was later identified as David Fullard. According to reports, He had started carrying a firearm because of safety concerns after previous attacks on bus drivers. But the transit company had a strict policy against employees carrying weapons while on duty, and because of that, even though the weapon may have saved his life, he was fired. The passenger was identified as 22-year-old Omari Tobias. He was arrested, but later released after posting bond, and was also banned from ever using Charlotte's public transit system again. And that is what makes this case so controversial. The passenger pulled a gun over a bus stop, and the driver survived because he was able to defend himself. And once the encounter was over, he still lost his job for carrying the very thing that may have kept him alive. But the next case is unsettling in a much quieter way, because this time, the threat is not seen at first. It is heard. Our next encounter takes us to Jacksonville, Florida, where a man named Eric lives on a massive piece of property surrounded by more than 300 acres of swampland. And according to Eric, there is one detail that makes the property even more unsettling. He says the land was once used as a Native American burial site. Over the course of several days, Eric began noticing strange things around the property. There were unusual noises coming from the woods, movements in the darkness, and sounds that did not seem to have any obvious explanation. At first, he thought it might be trespassers. Maybe someone was sneaking onto the land, hiding in the woods, or using the property without permission. So he started locking everything up more carefully and paying closer attention to what was happening outside. But then, one night around 1:30 in the morning, everything changed.
Y'all, I just walked off the porch and I came out here to check on the chickens. I just heard, first off, I heard my name. Second off, it sounded like somebody was saying, help me. Hold on. Hold on.
Hey. Help. I need help. Eric, can you help me?
Eric was standing on his porch when he heard something coming from the woods. It was a voice. Somewhere out in the darkness, something was calling for help.
Hey. Help. I need help. Eric, can you help me?
Eric tries to figure out where the voice is coming from. He scans the area, looks into the trees, and listens closely, but he cannot see anyone. There is no person, no movement, just the voice. That alone is enough to put him on edge. So he heads back inside, locks the doors, and spends the rest of the night on high alert. The next morning, Eric decides to investigate the area where the voice seemed to be coming from. And that is when something strange happens.
Okay, so we are out here exactly where everybody said this thing was standing. This is the spot right here. Exactly the spot. There's the track. I see no footprints. So this is the exact spot right here, guys. There's the chickens in the background. So I don't know. This is in this area right here is where it was standing. Is where everybody said it was standing. I couldn't see it while standing just about over there. There we go. And so we keep this stuff like this locked. We keep stuff like this locked because, like I said, crackheads. Let's check to make sure it's locked. Door's locked. This is the trailer that I was worried about. Did you fucking see that, bro? Look, I'm telling you, bro. What the fuck? Okay, we're just gonna peek in. Oh my, what the fuck?
For a moment, he just stands there, clearly debating whether he should go grab a weapon before going any farther. But despite his hesitation, he decides to move forward.
There's fucking walking around in this motherfucker, bro. Hello? Still gonna have to climb in this motherfucker. Probably should have brought my gun. Hello? Fuck! Y'all fucking heard that shit. Oh, no, man. It's happening all around me right now. Like, it's the worst that it's ever been.
When Eric finally opens the trailer, there is nobody inside. And if that was not strange enough, the sounds returned later that same night. Only this time, they sound louder, closer. Now determined to get answers, Eric decides to investigate further than before. But that is when the situation takes a much darker turn. He hears something so disturbing that he immediately panics and starts running. During the chaos, he accidentally drops his phone, but the recording keeps going. In the audio, you can hear footsteps, breathing, and other unexplained sounds, almost as if something is moving nearby while Eric is trying to get away. After some time, he manages to return and recover his phone. At first, Eric believed all of this could be explained by someone trespassing on his property. Maybe it was just an intruder hiding somewhere in the woods. But after everything that happened, especially because the voice seemed to know his name, he was no longer sure what to believe. And honestly, it is hard to blame him. Because hearing noises outside is one thing, but hearing a voice calling your name from the darkness, asking for help, when no one is supposed to be there, is something completely different. For now, all we can do is wait and see whether Eric ever shares more updates about what was happening on that property. But the next encounter does not come from the woods. It walked straight through an open door. When one small mistake during a quiet morning shift in Mexico left a security guard trapped inside her own booth with nowhere to escape. It was just after 6 o'clock in the morning at a residential condominium. The female guard had dozed off in her chair, and behind her, the booth door had been left wide open. At first, that might sound like a small detail, but within seconds, that open door changed everything. Without warning, a woman wearing a jacket and cap walked straight into the booth. Before the guard even had time to understand what was happening, the woman pulled out a hammer and began attacking her. The blows came down quickly, jolting the guard awake in complete shock as she tried to protect herself inside the tiny room. Confused, injured, and trapped, the guard raised her hands to shield her face while trying to get out of the chair. But the attacker kept going. As the guard struggled to stand, another blow landed, nearly knocking her down again. Somehow, even while injured, she managed to fight back, kicking at the woman and trying to create enough space to escape. For a few moments, the two women wrestled inside the small booth, while the attacker shouted demands for the guard's phone. Eventually, the woman managed to grab it and run off, leaving the guard badly injured and close to fainting. With no one nearby to help immediately, the guard managed to contact her colleagues. But emergency services took too long to respond, so a private vehicle had to rush her to the nearest hospital. Investigators later discovered that the attacker had allegedly been seen around the complex for several days before the incident. Locals said she appeared to be struggling with mental health issues, and her only clear motive seemed to be stealing the guard's phone. Thankfully, doctors confirmed that the guard would survive, although her recovery would take time. A formal complaint was filed with prosecutors, but as of now, no major updates have surfaced about whether the attacker was ever caught. And that is what makes this encounter so frightening. It did not happen in a dark alley, an abandoned building, or a dangerous street at night. It happened during a normal morning shift, inside a security booth, where one open door left a woman trapped with her attacker. And that takes us to our next encounter that comes from Urbex Hill, the YouTube channel run by an urban explorer named Chris, who spends his videos documenting abandoned places most people would never step inside.
I ain't gonna fuck with your stuff. You good, bro?
In this video, Chris explored multiple abandoned buildings in Cleveland, Ohio, starting with the old Fisher Brothers factory. The building had been standing since the early 1900s and was once connected to a grocery chain that operated hundreds of stores across northern Ohio. But after the company moved out, the building was eventually used for storage, and by 2011, it had been left abandoned. At first, Chris's goal was simple. He wanted to walk through the factory, document what was left behind, and then move on to several other abandoned buildings in East Cleveland later that night. But almost immediately, the atmosphere inside the factory felt tense. Before Chris even started exploring properly, he realized he was not alone. There were people inside.
What up, bro? I ain't gonna fuck with your stuff. You good, bro? I ain't gonna fuck with your stuff. You can come in. I'm just saying I ain't gonna fuck with your stuff.
You're fine, bro. Okay. I can't wait on you to come up there. I can't wait on you to come. Yeah, I was saying.
Those scrappers is pissed. Jesus Christ.
This made the exploration feel tense immediately, but it still was not enough for Chris to cancel his plans. Instead, he headed deeper into the factory, hoping he would not run into them again. But at the same time, he knew that if people were already staying inside this building, there was a good chance they were not the only ones.
They seemed a little pissed earlier. But, I mean, I'm not worried. They didn't bother me. Shit, I mean, why would they? Damn, y'all heard that? Probably fireworks. And some death drop. You hear that? Damn. I hope they're not coming up. Hopefully they stay down there. Guys, it is so hot, man, in this building. Hello? Fuck was that noise?
As he moved through the building, he could hear footsteps, voices, movement, and sounds echoing through the empty floors. And in a place like this, that is what makes everything feel so unpredictable. Because abandoned buildings are already dangerous on their own.
Whoa. Dude, I swear everything scares you when you explore alone. That blowing in the wind, I thought that was someone there. Hear that? Oh, somebody comes over here. Maybe he was trying to make it to this little den right here. Yeah, they definitely come over here. There's a little fire pit. And we got a nice little breeze from the window.
As Chris continued through the factory, he started finding signs that people had been living there. There were clothes, makeshift sleeping areas, trash, alcohol cans, and small spaces that looked like they had been used as shelters. And that is when the situation became more uncomfortable. At first, Chris thought the people he heard inside the factory might be the same men he had seen earlier. So while he moved deeper into the building, he stayed careful. He listened before entering rooms, checked around corners, and tried not to make too much noise. But eventually, he realized the situation was not what he first thought.
Oh, he is still here. Shit. What's up? I don't know who those people are. Yeah, that's sketchy. You see what I mean, chat? That was sketchy as hell. Come in here like that. And then bounce.
Hey, Urbex Hill?
Yeah.
Bro, we were just in that fucking factory, bro. I did not know that was you.
Yeah, that was me.
What's up, man?
What's up, bro?
I watched all the fucking videos.
The people inside out to be other explorers. One of them even recognized him from his channel, Urbex Hill, and for a moment, the tension completely changed. What had felt like a possible confrontation suddenly became a normal conversation between people who were there for the same reason. But that did not mean the building was safe. Because the next day, Chris returned to the factory. And this time, the person he encountered was not another explorer. It was a man who appeared to be living inside the building.
Oh, shit. What up, man? I saw you the other day, didn't I? Let me come in for a second. How long you been staying here? Yeah.
Get out of the rain and get out of, people who got shit or whatever and don't want to be bothered.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of their face, because, you walking around them and they feeling you get spit on, get cussed at or whatever. It's kind of, on you, what I mean?
Right.
You know how people live.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to do a little something here. If I can, I'll get it together. If I can't,
Yeah. Well, here you go, man. I try to help everybody that I, less fortunate that I stumble across, and yeah, man, stay safe. Shit.
The moment Chris came across him, he immediately tried to de-escalate. And for a moment, the situation could have gone either way. The man explained that he had been staying in the factory because he did not feel safe at the homeless shelter nearby. According to him, his belongings had been stolen there before, and he felt like some of the younger men picked on him. So instead of going back, he had chosen to sleep inside an abandoned factory. After hearing that, Chris gave him some money and left him alone. And that moment changed the entire feeling of the encounter. At first, it felt dangerous. But once they actually spoke, it became clear that the man was not just some random threat hiding in the dark. He was someone trying to survive in a place most people would be too afraid to enter. After that, Chris visited a few other abandoned locations around East Cleveland before eventually deciding to head home. But the encounter at the factory is what stayed with him. To Chris, it was an abandoned factory. But to that man, it was where he slept, where he kept his belongings, and one of the only places he felt safe. In abandoned buildings like this, the danger is not always what has been left behind. Sometimes it is who is still there. But the next case is darker because this time the victim does not realize she is being lured outside. On April 2nd, 2026, a Florida store clerk stepped outside to check on a disturbance in the parking lot, unaware that she was walking straight into a trap. It happened just after 7 o'clock in the morning at a gas station in Fort Myers. Surveillance footage showed 40-year-old Robert Yokin standing in the parking lot, holding what appeared to be a hammer. He was striking a parked SUV repeatedly, smashing the windshield and damaging the vehicle as the loud bangs echoed across the lot. Moments later, 51-year-old clerk Analafa Iman stepped out of the convenience store to confront him about the damage. From her perspective, it probably looked like a man vandalizing a customer's vehicle. But according to investigators, the man was not really there for the car. As Analafa approached, he suddenly turned on her. Before she could get away, he attacked her with the same object he had been using on the SUV. She fell to the ground, and even after she was down, the attack continued until she was no longer moving. By the time police arrived, Analafa was unresponsive and could not be revived. Yokin fled the scene on foot, triggering a police search across the area. Later that same day, officers found him walking on a nearby street and arrested him without incident. But during questioning, the case became even more disturbing. According to investigators, Yokin confessed that he had gone to the gas station specifically to target a clerk that morning. He also admitted that he damaged the SUV on purpose as a way to lure her outside. He was later charged with murder and property damage, and prosecutors announced that they would be seeking the death penalty. And that is what makes this encounter so disturbing. Analafa thought she was stepping outside to deal with a damaged car, but the car was never the real target. It was bait. And by the time she realized that, she had already walked directly into the trap. And after a case that was planned from the start, the next encounter feels much harder to explain, because the most disturbing detail was only seen after the footage was played back. On October 22, 2019, a woman named Maddie Ann uploaded a video that left a lot of people feeling uneasy. At first, the footage does not seem like anything unusual, but the more context you hear, the stranger it becomes. For nearly 2 weeks leading up to that night, Maddie and her husband had been hearing strange noises outside their home. The sounds were hard to explain. They almost sounded like animals, but not quite. And every time they looked out the windows or went outside to check, they found nothing. Not once. But that night, when the noises started again, Maddie was ready. With her phone in hand, she began recording, hoping to finally capture whatever had been making the sounds. What she did not realize was that she was about to record something far more unsettling.
Hearing the craziest noises. Listen. I gotta check this out. What the Where the did it go? What the oh my God. Hello? Is anyone there? Oh my god. Thought I heard those noises again.
I heard him last night.
I didn't see anything, but I wanted to just look.
Probably just an animal or something.
I keep seeing all those cats.
The noises begin, and despite how disturbing they sound, Maddie makes a decision most people probably would not make. She steps outside alone to investigate. She walks around the property, shines her light into the darkness, and searches the area, but she does not find anything. Eventually, she heads back inside, assuming it was probably just an animal. But later, when she reviews the footage, she notices something she completely missed at the time. And that is when the video changes. Behind a tree, there appears to be a figure standing completely still, watching her. Then, the moment her flashlight points in that direction, it moves quickly, pulling its head back behind the tree as if it does not want to be seen. At that moment itself, Maddie did not notice it clearly. But on video, it is much harder to ignore. She may not have been alone out there, and according to many viewers, whatever was behind that tree did not appear entirely human. After the incident, Maddie and her husband returned to the area the following day to take a closer look, and what they found only made the mystery even stranger.
They go between this bush and our fence. It's a pretty narrow area.
Whatever it is, walking around barefoot out here. 20, 30 degree weather. It's not warm. "14 inches.
Jesus Christ.
On heel to toe.
They discovered footprints near the area, but according to them, the prints did not look normal. They did not look human, but they also did not resemble any animal tracks they recognized. The most unusual part was their size. The footprints measured roughly 14 inches long, much larger than an average human footprint. And whoever, or whatever, left them behind appeared to have been barefoot in the cold. So what exactly was standing in their yard that night? Was it someone playing a prank? Was it an animal seen from a strange angle? Was it something more unusual? Or was the entire thing staged? Whatever the answer is, one thing is clear. After watching this footage, walking outside alone to investigate strange noises in the dark suddenly feels like a very bad idea. But sometimes the danger does not stay hidden in the dark. Sometimes it walks straight up to the front door and tries to get inside. That happened when peaceful night at a California home turned terrifying when an uninvited stranger walked up to the front porch and refused to leave. Surveillance cameras captured the man approaching the front door just after 10 p.m. But he did not knock and wait for someone to answer. Instead, he immediately started forcing his way inside. The homeowner, identified as Yang Luan, rushed to the doorway and tried to stop him, but the man kept pushing forward, refusing to back down. Within seconds, the two men were locked in a physical struggle at the entrance of the home. Yang tried to force him back outside, but the stranger continued fighting his way in. From inside the house, all Yang's wife could hear was the commotion downstairs, and when she realized her husband was struggling with someone at the door, she ran down from the bedroom. Her name was Yui Zhang, and she was holding a gun she had only bought the day before. When she saw her husband fighting with a stranger who was forcing his way into their home, She had only seconds to decide what to do. She opened fire, and moments later, the intruder collapsed near the doorway and stopped moving. A neighbor was called to help the couple contact police, since they did not speak much English. When officers arrived, they found the man unresponsive at the front door. Investigators later identified him as 22-year-old Angelo Santana, a local man from Patterson. According to police, Santana had been heavily drunk that night, and this was apparently not the first time he had shown up unannounced in the neighborhood while intoxicated, looking for his friends. But on this night, he had gone to the wrong house entirely. Yang walked away with only minor scratches from the struggle. Santana, however, was unarmed, and no weapons were found on him. After reviewing the evidence, investigators concluded that the shooting was consistent with self-defense. The couple cooperated fully with police, and ultimately, no arrests were made. And that is what makes this case so unsettling. The intruder may have been drunk, confused, or convinced he was at the right place, but for the couple inside, none of that mattered in the moment. All they knew was that a stranger was forcing his way into their home, and they had only seconds to decide how to survive it. And the final encounter is disturbing for a completely different reason, because this time, the horror happened in front of everyone, and almost no one stepped in. An afternoon party on one of Colombia's largest reservoirs turned into something far more disturbing when a confrontation on board left a young man with no safe way out. A group of young people had boarded a tourist boat for a cruise. Music was playing, people were drinking, and at first, the atmosphere seemed lively and normal. But as the day went on, an argument broke out among the passengers, and the mood on board changed completely. Footage from inside the boat showed 22-year-old Alexander Varela being surrounded by several people. They pushed closer from every side, shouting at him and allegedly striking him as the confrontation became more aggressive. With people closing in around him, Alexander seemed to have nowhere to go and no way to calm the situation down. Eventually, in what appeared to be a desperate attempt to escape the aggression, he jumped over the edge of the boat and into the water below. But tragically, Alexander could not swim. What happened next is what shocked viewers even more than the confrontation itself. No one jumped in to help him. No one threw him a life vest. No one appeared to make a serious attempt to rescue him. Instead, the boat continued moving away while Alexander struggled in the water. A massive search operation was launched soon after, with divers, river police, and community volunteers searching the reservoir for any sign of him. 5 days later, his body was finally recovered. Once the footage from inside the boat began spreading online, authorities opened an investigation into what happened. As of now, the case is still under review. And that is what makes this encounter so heartbreaking. Alexander did not jump because he was trying to be reckless. He jumped because, in that moment, he seemed to believe the water was safer than staying on the boat. But once he was in the water, the people around him did almost nothing. In the end, the most disturbing part was not only the confrontation that pushed him over the edge. It was the fact that so many people watched him struggle afterward and still failed to help. That's all for today, folks. If you like to see more of this creepy content, click on the video on screen.